So in this video, I will be demonstrating how to run a Pearson's R correlation in SPSS. Now, if you remember, a correlation is used to assess the relationship between two continuous variables. However, you can run more than one correlation at a time. So for this example, I want to see if there's a significant relationship between, first, record sales and advertising budget, second, record sales and number of employees, and third, advertising budget and number of employees. So I'm going to be running 3 correlations at one time. And these correlations will actually be used to assess the assumption of multicollinearity for the multiple regression video, or at least this is one way to check it. Now, in regard to correlation, there's a few assumptions that you need to check before running the analysis. The first assumption is the assumption of normality. However, I'm not going to discuss how to check this assumption, since you can check it the same exact way that you would for a t-test or for an ANOVA. So if you need to learn how to do this, you can go ahead and check out my assumptions video, which is going to be playing somewhere on the screen. Now, the second assumption is the assumption of scale of measurement. And all this assumption is talking about is that your variables, that all the variables that you're using, are on a continuous scale. And to do this, you could just go ahead and check and look at the data. The third assumption is the assumption of linearity. Now, to check this assumption, you're going to want to create a scatterplot. So to get the scatterplot, you'll go to Graphs, then Legacy Dialogues, and then click on Scatter/Dot. When you get this screen, you want to make sure that Simple Scatter is selected because sometimes if you're working on something else, you may have selected Matrix Scatter. Simple Scatter is always the default, but just always click on it just to make sure that's what you're going to get. So once Simple Scatter is selected, you go ahead and click Continue. From here, this is the screen that you're going to get. And what you'll want to do is put the 2 variables that you're assessing the relationship between into the X and the Y axis. Now, it doesn't really matter which variable you put where. However, it's customary to put your dependent variable into the y-axis and your independent variable into the x-axis. But like I said, in reality, it doesn't matter. Once you have your 2 variables into the x and y-axis, you go ahead and click Continue. And this is what you're going to get. This is what the scatter plot looks like. And from here, what you just want to check is to make sure that there's not a curved linear relationship. So in other words, you don't see a curve in the graph. You just want a straight line. And that is exactly what we get here. So for record sales and advertising budget, the assumption of linearity is met. Now, we still have a few more scatter plots that we would need to assess since we're running 3 separate correlations. And you could do that by all means, but there's an easier way to get this. And that's by making a matrix scatter plot. And basically what the matrix scatter plot is going to do is take all the scatter plots that you would have run and put them into one plot. So to get this matrix scatter plot, what you'll need to do is go to Graphs, then Legacy Dialogues, and then click on Scatter/Dot. And then here, what you'll want to select is Matrix Scatter. Now, when you get this screen, you'll want to move all the variables over that you want. So for us, we want all 3 of these variables. Once those variables are moved over, you could go ahead and click OK. And then this is exactly what the matrix scatter plot will look like. Okay, so now on to the correlation and analysis. To run the correlation, what you'll need to do is go to Analyze, then Correlate, and then click on Bivariate. Here, what you'll need to do is move all the variables that you want to test the relationship between into the box on the right. So for this example, I'm going to move all 3 variables over. Once you have your variables into the box on the right, you want to go ahead and click on Options. Now here, you could get your means and standard deviations. So if that's something that you want, you could go ahead and click on it, but obviously it's completely optional. Now, once you have everything selected that you want in this screen, you can go ahead and click Continue. And then click OK to run the correlations. So this is what your results are going to look like. This table is going to give you literally all of your relationships, and it'll even double up some of the relationships. So I'm not going to go over all the pairs in this output. I'm just going to go over one, just so you can kind of get an understanding of how to interpret these results. So for this, I'm going to be going over the relationship between record sales and advertising budget. So there's 3 aspects that we need to look at. Now, the first aspect is whether or not the correlation is significant. And to test this, what you want to do is look at the sig value. And I've gone ahead and circled it in red so you can see what I'm looking at. So here we see that our p-value is less than 0.05. So what this indicates is that, well, yes, there is a significant relationship between record sales and advertising budget. After you've figured out whether or not your relationship is significant, you could go ahead and move on to the next step. Now, if it's not significant, you could technically stop and just say that there's no significant relationship between the 2 variables. But like I said, since our relationship was significant, we're going to go ahead and move on. So the second thing that we need to look at is the strength of the relationship. And we're going to find this here, and it's circled in black. This value is your R value. And this specific R value that we get, it suggests that we have a moderate to a strong relationship between the 2 variables, which is pretty good. It's not too bad. And then the last area, or the last aspect that we need to interpret, is the direction of the relationship. Now, to interpret the direction of the relationship, all we need to do is look at that R value and see if there's a minus sign in front of it, or if there's no sign, not a sign at all in front of it. If there's not a minus sign in front of it, that means that we have a positive relationship. If there is a minus sign in front of our R value, this indicates that we have a negative relationship. However, since our R value is positive 0.506, this indicates that we have a positive relationship. So what this means is that as one variable increases, so does the other. So for our data, this means that as advertising budget increases, so does our record sales. Now, if this happened to be a negative R value, which like I've already said, it's not, but just for clarification, if it happened to be, theoretically, this would mean that as one variable increases, the other variable decreases. So for these variables, it would mean that as advertising budget increases, record sales decrease. And so that is everything that you need to know about Pearson's R correlation. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment below. But if you're one of my students, just go ahead and email me or text me.